Hey everybody, you're playing College Football 26, and I'm going to walk you through obtaining the National Championship Achievement / Trophy here. This is done in Road to Glory. I picked an elite quarterback as a dual threat, and then I just left everything else the same. Now this will be slightly different than College Football 25. In 25, you would just pick a college to attend and then progress through that year. This year, we're having to play through high school first in College Football 26. This adds a layer of complexity to the achievement because we need to perform well in high school to attend a championship contending college as a QB1. Right off the bat, you're inundated with conversations that provide options for how you respond. The goal with all of these is to be as polite as possible and never risk anything. We will take a look at the more complex conversations as they arise throughout this process. But once you're in this high school board here, we can go into our recruitment and we can add schools that we might be interested in attending. Essentially, you want to pick schools that are anticipated to be college football playoff contenders. Essentially, all that means is you're just picking schools that are ranked high, that have a high overall rating on the right-hand side here. So you can skim through the rest of these schools, but the majority of the high-ranking schools are going to be at the top. So I picked a few schools here. We're going to move on and advance into the next week. Now, just to reiterate about the conversations that you'll have, because they do pop up pretty frequently. You'll have coaches, teammates, advisors, and brands all engaging with you throughout this process. At every chance, be respectful, not cocky or arrogant, and in college, use your skill points whenever possible. And we will see what that looks like when we get to the college portion of this video, but I'll show you what that means when we get to that point. So this is our first week in high school, and for each of the 5 weeks in high school, this is what we're going to do. We're going to click on play game, and then within this menu, we can select 4 different objectives that we need to complete for this week. Obviously, I do recommend selecting objectives that you feel confident that you could complete, but it is not a requirement to complete 100% of the objectives every single week. There were some objectives that I failed or only halfway completed. So just note, you want to perform as best you can within each of these weeks for the objectives. But if you don't complete all of them, it's not a huge deal. You will have an opportunity within these objectives to retry, but you only get 5 retries every week. So if you don't complete an objective, you can see here, I did not complete the 10-yard scramble and I can retry this moment, but I only have 5 remaining retries. If you are struggling with some of the objectives to the point where you fail some of them, that doesn't necessarily mean your career is over. I failed 2 or 3 objectives throughout this whole process and still was able to make it into a great school where we won the national championship in the first year. So if you stumble on a few of these, it is not the end of the world. If you're done with an objective and you want to move on from that mini game, scoring a touchdown will end the drive and that objective. If you are performing well, you'll start to receive offer letters from schools, and once you receive an offer letter from a school that you absolutely want to attend, you can go ahead and accept that offer in your recruitment menu. If you do not accept an offer, it can be rescinded if you start to perform poorly. Here's a couple more examples of conversations that you might run into in the high school process. So this is a classmate saying he wants to study with us. We're going to go ahead and study with him. That's going to increase our school interest. Another conversation is one with a head coach here from Ohio State. So colleges might reach out to you and offer you a challenge. More than likely they will. You can accept that challenge, and then that's going to put a new objective within your objective list for that week. So if we go to that game and we play this game after talking to that head coach and accepting his challenge, there will be a new objective at the bottom of this board directly from Ohio State. Truthfully, I received a few challenges from head coaches at various universities, but they were the same challenge every time, which was to complete a 50+ yard pass. These are relatively easy and they boost schools' interest in you significantly. So this is me having accepted that objective and completing that objective. I threw a 50+ yard pass that resulted in a touchdown, and that objective was complete. Good to go. We can move on to the next week. Eventually, the schools sending you offer letters become more and more prestigious. You can see there Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. Those are all national championship contenders, or at least college football playoff contenders, and that's what we're looking for. By the end of the high school process, we've completed week 5 of 5, and we've successfully completed the majority of the objectives within each week. If you notice in the top right hand corner, my player rank is at 5 stars. At this point, we're given the opportunity to cut our recruitment selection down to 3 schools. During this process, what I did is I looked for schools that were both obviously college football playoff contenders and that had me sitting as a QB1 starter. That was Clemson in my case. So if you look over on the right hand side, you can see that Clemson has me sitting as a QB1 starter. I made sure that they were in my top 3 school selection. Once you have 3 schools selected as your top 3, we're going to advance the week here and move on to the hat selection. Before we jump to the hat selection though, we're going to set our mental ability. So for this one, I just picked the top mental ability. I'm not real sure if all of the other ones will work just as well, but I just added the winning time mental ability here and moved on to the hat selection from this point. I want to back up ever so slightly just to discuss why we obviously want to be a QB1 and a school that is a college football playoff contender. So we're going to move on to the hat selection here, but we are going to pick Clemson as previously stated because their overall stats are high enough to consider them to be college football playoff contenders, and we were scheduled to be a starter, a QB1 at that school. That's going to give us the chance to win the national championship within the first year. If we can win the national championship in the first year, we don't have to sim for very long, but the rest of this process is just going to be simming games. So we are committed to Clemson. We're going to advance the week here out of high school, and that's going to take us to our dorm room at Clemson. From this point moving forward, the process is a little more involved, but just from the standpoint that we need to select more menu options, not necessarily that we have to play any of the games. We actually don't have to play any of the games. We're going to sim all of them. But first things first, we are a QB3, as you can see up there. We need to get to a QB1 status. Right off the bat, as soon as we get into Clemson, we're offered a QB2 challenge to get us from QB3 to QB2. So if you arrive at your university and you are a QB3 and you are expected to be a QB1, that is okay. You will progress very quickly because your skill set is much higher than someone who was anticipated to be a QB3 and got stuck there. So we were offered a QB2 position challenge. We're going to go ahead and battle here, but we are going to save, and I highly recommend saving at certain points so that you don't accidentally progress and then miss out on the actual achievement that you're attempting to collect. Going into the position battle for QB2, this one is much easier than obviously the QB2 to QB1 position battle, but all you're doing is completing mini games and beating the score in the top right hand corner. Complete 2 out of the 3 mini games and you will be a QB2. The QB1 position battle just came a couple weeks into the first year for me, but first things first, we're here in the first week of college, and I have a lot of skill points to use. So I'm going to go through my player and upgrade him, and essentially what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the attributes that require the fewest amount of skill currency, and I'm putting my points towards those attributes so that I can get the most out of my skill points as possible. The other thing you're going to want to do is tab over to the physicals department over here, and these are skills that complement your player aside from your ratings attributes. So make sure you're using your skill points in both locations. Outside of upgrade players, we're going to go to our weekly agenda. This is where it gets a little more complex. You can see here I spent some currency on my XP, but for the most part, you're going to want to apply that silver currency to your academics and your leadership because those are typically the lowest from the start, and we need to get those up to a green, if not at least a yellow. You'll also want to sim your practices every week, but that position battle for quarterback was our practice for that week. Here is another conversation. So anytime you have currency that you can spend, you want to spend it. All right. So that's a really good example of a conversation where we're just going to go ahead and use the currency that we have. Same here. So that currency does take away from your weekly currency, but it also boosts attributes for you on the back end. One of those attributes or measures of success is your GPA. You will have an academic advisor who will coach you through your GPA improvement, and make sure you use any currency that you have on her as well in case of studying and things like that. So here we are in week 1. I'm going to run you through the standard process each week. You're going to upgrade your player if you can, sim your practice, and then jump into weekly agenda and utilize your silver currency. You want to do this strategically because some of them require 1, some of them require 2. Some of them require 1 after you have spent 2, but for the most part, we're going to use them on academic and leadership and then advance the week. Now, I know I said it was a couple weeks into my first year where I got my QB1 position battle, but this was actually just after the first week. I became a QB1, and one of the strategies that you can use here is that if you seem to be failing one of these mini games, you can actually pause and restart the mini game. So there's really no reason for you to fail any of these. For example, this one was a bit of a learning curve for me at first, but once I got the hang of it, I blew that score out of the water. Battle 1 here, QB1 position obtained. Now we can work on just simply simming through the rest of these weeks, upgrading player, practice, sim, and weekly agenda. I do want to take a moment and just explain with a little greater detail the weekly agenda process. So like I mentioned, my main focus was academics and leadership. That's because those 2 meters give attributes or skills. You can see fan favorite there and clear-headed. So if my GPA is high, I will get a fan favorite boost. And if my leadership is high, I will get a clear-headed boost. Likewise, local hero gives us a road dog boost. So if you can keep those 3 meters high strategically with the silver currency, you're going to be placed in the best possible position to win the national championship, or at least make it to the national championship. So again, here's just another conversation example. We're going to be polite, but here's another one from our academic advisor. I mentioned studying. You want to study a lot. Make sure your GPA increases so that we can get that fan favorite attribute or skill. There will be 2 instances where your academic advisor will present grades to you within an academic year. That's why you want to keep your weekly agenda academics meter high so your GPA increases and you get that fan favorite badge. On top of that, you will also be provided deals from businesses. So local businesses or various brands might offer you deals. You always want to take these deals because it provides you with either skill points or boosted attributes. Just to beat a dead horse here, here's another example of a conversation where you'll have to use some of your currency with the coach, but you absolutely want to do this. Do not decline this. Never risk anything. Be conservative and answer the questions properly. Some of the questions will be multiple choice. In some instances, some of the coaches will try to test you. You don't have to get all of those right, but try to be as precise as possible in every other instance. So another example of this is going to be credit. You never want to credit yourself, credit someone else. If you credit the team, your leadership will increase. If you credit the fans, your follower or local hero will increase. So just make sure that you're putting those points where you need to. And this is yet another conversation example. So this is a coach giving you a challenge for game day. You do not need to play those games necessarily. I went ahead and just simmed through those weeks and it gave me credit for completing those challenges anyways. So here's a teammate. He wants me to go to class with him. So I said, yes, of course. You want to be polite, respectful. Don't be arrogant. Don't be cocky. Make sure you take all of the deals. Use currency where possible. I think that pretty much covers everything. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section below. But at this point, you should be able to understand the gist of what I'm getting at here. We want to be in the best possible position to succeed and sim through every week in doing that. You'll start to see the benefits of being consistent in this way. You'll start to unlock these attributes and even boost them up to platinum levels. So it will go silver, gold, platinum, but you can see we're unlocking these skills that then will apply each week and make it that much easier for us to progress through, upgrade your player, sim your practices, weekly agenda attributes, and then advance the next week. By the end of the regular season, we are 13-0. We're number 1 in the country. We have won our ACC championship game, and we are in bowl week 1 of 4. Now we are going to save this file separate from the auto saves so that if we happen to lose one of these bowl games, we can just restart from here without having to do all of the high school stuff first. If you do happen to lose, you can always progress to the next year and try to win the national championship that year, but we're going to do it in the first year here. So as you can see, we lost that first bowl game. We are stuck here in the Road to Glory end menu. So we want to reload that save that we just saved. We're going to back out to the main menu. From here, we're just going to select Road to Glory again. We're going to tab down to load, and we're going to load the file that we saved. There might be an autosave just above that file, but we're looking for RTG, meaning Road to Glory, and then our save file CFP. So that's going to be the second one down here, RTG CFP. That's the one we want. Again, I highly recommend doing it this way, saving as often as possible. I had to save before every bowl game, and I lost every bowl game twice, which I'm not real sure is just a coincidence, I guess. But after the third time with each bowl game, I won when reloading the save. And once you're done with all of the bowl games, you can then send to the national championship, and that should pop the trophy for you. I know that was rather lengthy, but hopefully that helps you guys out. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.